It's time once more for me to discuss Charmwork, the original book series I'm in the process of writing. Any of the videos I have already made about this series will be available in this playlist, so if this is your first time hearing about Charmwork, I'd recommend checking that out to get the background on the characters and magic system, as this video will make reference to both. Today, though, I'd like to broaden our horizons to talk about the world these characters live in, and the various elements I added to it in order to give some spice and plot potential to the story. Also, I'm going to quickly insert myself here to ask that you watch until the end, or just watch the end, to participate in a quick vote I'm holding. I added a lot of smaller things to the world, such as specific geography, a real-world city for the story to be roughly based in, different plants to be used as medicine, decoration, construction, and otherwise, and animals, besides cats or dogs, to live in the area as either prey, peers, or predators. However, for today, I will be focusing on two broad categories that are more unique and important to the story of Charmwork: categorized groups and a cat calendar. Let's begin with the former. Cats in this region are broadly divided into three categories: house cats, who live with humans in their houses; city folk, who live around the city and specifically avoid people; and wild dwellers, who live somewhere in the wild and tend to completely avoid human-populated areas. Each of these groups has their own customs, values, strengths, and interactions with other groups, and these differences can impact their personalities, temperaments, goals, and the thoughts of every cat. Charmwork's main cast is composed of house cats and wild dwellers, both of whom end up being forced to acclimate to the city, at least at first. In the process, they meet a lot of city folk as well. Let's go over all three then, to discuss the broad cultural differences between them. Keep in mind that these groups all exist in one specific region of the world, and cats, dogs, coyotes, squirrels, and otherwise in different areas of the world may well have different cultural elements or traditions. First up is, of course, house cats. As in our world, they tend to live in small groups, typically with 1 to 4 cats. These cats can sometimes be related, most often being siblings, and sometimes being a mother and children, and sometimes can have no relation at all. Choices about who these cats live with and where are determined by the humans they live with, so these cats most often learn to value whoever they are placed in their house with as their family, including humans and other creatures in the house, often dogs and sometimes even bunnies, birds, or lizards, depending on how much they are able to get along and see them as friends rather than food. As a result of this, the act of being chosen by a human to live in their house is a momentous and sought-after day for most house cats. If you find a good home, you are set for life, so house cat parents will often raise their children on stories of how it will be okay when they're separated, since they will find their forever home. And foster groups will often look forward to the day when they are put up for adoption so they can be chosen by a human. House cat names are also chosen by people, often coinciding with some sort of theme. Kittens all from a specific litter may be named after groups of foods, colors, seasons, or characters from a piece of human media, among other things. These names can change, though, after adoption, particularly if the human wants to name their new cats after something important to their family or life. Cats who were given new names when they were adopted often develop intense connections to those names as symbols of their acceptance into a family and mark of their identity as they will be for the rest of their lives. House cats make up the largest percentage of cats in this particular region. However, since many of those cats are kept indoors rather than being allowed to wander their yards or the city, it is possible to avoid meeting them as often as you'd meet city folk. Culturally, house cats are the most in tune with human language and traditions, often even understanding a few human words and some elements of their routines and holidays. More often than not, they are unaware of and don't celebrate cat-specific legends, traditions, or holidays, but this is not something they tend to miss. Most house cats live separately from each other, and therefore can develop different habits and values depending on the house they live in. By and large, though, they tend to enjoy cozy spots, whatever that may mean to them, napping, and following particular daily routines. They may also be somewhat particular or picky about the food they like eating, habits they must always take part in, or humans they will or will not spend time with. House cats are often scorned, quietly or not so quietly, by other groups for being lazy, stuck-up, greedy, or ignorant, but they have a lot of strengths of their own. They understand and get along with humans and sometimes even other animals better than any other group, learning not just how they act or what their language or mannerisms are like, but also how to communicate with them and ask for things they need. Thanks to their routines and eating habits, they also tend to be the most physically strong and resilient, even if they haven't learned to utilize that skill. Admittedly, though, they don't tend to know much or anything about the outside world, and as they are shut off from other cats for so long, they can come off as presumptuous, naive, strange, or threatened around others of their kind. Some house cats, particularly those who are the only cat in the household, can even end up emulating human behavior more than other cats. Indoor house cats don't have as many interactions with other cats, save perhaps for seeing city folk out the window on occasion. But cats who are allowed out into their yards or into the city often come to know the city folk significantly more, and allow for a trading network that wouldn't be possible without them. House cats, through their people, have access to plants that don't naturally grow in the area that can be important for medicine, and in rare cases may even donate dry bedding to cats who desperately need it outside. The cats they most often trade with, and the lifeblood of the town, are city folk. These cats most often live alone or in pairs, usually either with a sibling or a partner, but will occasionally grow larger groups if they are part of a family that has decided to stay together. There aren't as many city folk as there are house cats, as most city folk end up wishing for the greater resources of the wild or the greater security of people's homes at some point in their lives. And some cats are taken into the shelters and foster systems by people, whether or not they wished for it. Those that stay in the city, though, tend to move around a lot, often basing themselves in parks, alleys, or the outskirts of the city where people don't constantly visit. This gives them access to dropped food and communication with house cats or wild dwellers when needed, while keeping themselves safe and avoiding getting picked up by the people. City folk also most often choose to be active during the night, until dawn, and avoid the midday and dusk hours, as that is when humans are most active. City folk names, like their backgrounds, are highly variable. They can emulate human names, be named after attributes they embody or value, or be named after particular objects or creatures they grew interested in or have a history with. City folk don't tend to place much value in the names their family gave them, since it is common to leave your family when you're young. As a result, in teenage years or adulthood, cats here may change their names to better fit particular qualities, stories, objects, or humans they came to define themselves by in their youth. The city folk life is a vibrant one, built on connection. Long-term city folk tend to befriend each other, house cats, and wild dwellers in order to best share resources, information, and safety, as well as giving them openings to get help when they need it. The city folk in this area have set up an elaborate trading network so that wild dwellers who may need plants from the house cats and house cats who may want trinkets from the wild can each get them, in exchange for providing the city folk with information, resources, or protection of their own. Different city folk participate more or less frequently in this network, but it is something that many city folk have come to rely on, and that many wild dwellers and even outdoor house cats have come to expect. For cultural elements, city folk are quite varied based on where they came from and who they interact with in adulthood. They may have knowledge or traditions from house cat culture, wild dweller culture, or even cultures from far outside the region, if they or their parents were travelers. Many city folk in this region do end up celebrating some of the more commonly known cat-specific holidays, at least, in order to break up the year, but it's not universal, and they don't tend to have the knowledge of or reverence for trees or nature as the wild dwellers do. City folk tend to value street smarts and physical skills more than other groups, along with communication, adaptability, resourcefulness, and building trust, while keeping enough suspicion to avoid being taken advantage of. There are numerous dangers in every direction: predators, captures by people, betrayals by other cats, or just lack of resources leading to death by natural causes. For that reason, city folk are the most open to forming relationships for mutual benefit, but are also the most concerned with keeping themselves, or the single cat they travel with, safe. Because of this demeanor, city folk have a reputation for being guarded or selfish, and wild dwellers and house cats alike look down on them for not simply choosing what they each claim to be an easier and more fulfilling lifestyle. However, both groups also value the city folk for the roles they play, and understand the benefit of befriending them. City folk are knowledgeable about all walks of life, and their reliance on physical abilities have given them strong skills in agility, stealth, and tactical fighting. They are skilled at negotiating between different groups, and are both adaptable and open to change if given proper incentive. However, it is true that they tend to be hesitant to fully trust others, can be guarded around personal matters, and often keep relationships at an arm's length, unless you're one of the few cats they already trusted. They can also be a bit flighty, having difficulty staying in one place or one routine for too long, a tendency either born from anxiety or curiosity. Whether or not that anxiety is warranted is a matter of debate, and may change with the times, but there are enough dangers and enough tragic tales to keep city folk wary. Whatever the case may be, it gave city folk a reputation for being unreliable if you were trying to seek a specific cat out at any specific time. The last broad group to cover is wild dwellers, cats who live anywhere outside human settlements, most often in forests for this particular region. Wild dwellers don't tend to move around frequently, instead picking a particular base to call their home and keeping it for as long as they are able, sometimes through several generations. Wild dwellers can live on their own, but most live in family groups with parents, kittens, siblings, and sometimes even grandparents in the same group. Many wild dwellers choose to split off and begin their own lives with siblings or a partner when they grow up, but some choose to live with their parents long into adulthood. It is much less common for cats who are unrelated to live together, but there have been temporary groups started through history where wild dwellers chose to ally together for safety or to beat a common enemy. These groups were already extremely rare, but in the last few years, due to some particular movements by a certain body, they have all but disappeared completely. There are more wild dwellers in this region than city folk, but not nearly as many as there are house cats. The wild dwellers that do live here, however, are extremely tight-knit with their families and have a rich culture. Wild dweller names almost always have something to do with nature. Different families have different traditions, from naming themselves after rocks or jewels, flowers or shrubs, animals or weather patterns. Some families traditionally name their kittens after their home trees, or trees in general, while others would consider it an extreme insult to even consider naming a creature after a tree. Because of their gathered heritage and more family-based living structure, wild dwellers are the most connected to and reliant on cat-specific holidays and beliefs. Different families give more importance to different holidays, and what beliefs or lore of the world a particular family may know can differ wildly, but this cultural base is something that wild dwellers tend to take great pride in, especially recently due to some incoming threats. Wild dwellers have come to rely more on their heritage to give them things to look forward to, and help them to hope or plan for the future. And don't worry, I'll get into what those beliefs and holidays are shortly. Wild dwellers deeply value family, both blood relations and romantic partners, sharing both resources, jobs, and feelings in order to become as close as they can. They value home as well, the specific place, routines, food, and celebrations that they become used to. Having a small bubble of normalcy and safety helps to stave off the fear they could otherwise build up in response to the predators and natural dangers inherent to the world. Partially because of that, and partially because of the forests they're surrounded by, wild dwellers are often the most in tune with and knowledgeable about Charmwork. Most every wild dweller will at least know that trees are to be respected due to the power they hold and give, and will learn about their own Charmwork by the time they become an adult, if not theirs and those of their family members. After my video on the subject of Charmwork, some people were wondering how it's possible for siblings to have different Charmwork, or what happens when a creature is born equally close to multiple trees. Well, this is something more commonly known among wild dwellers than anyone else, so I'll let you know now. When a litter of kittens is born, the time between each individual kitten's birth is usually between 10 minutes and an hour, averaging around 20 minutes. In that time, mothers can pace around in order to steady their breathing or relieve pain. As a result, even among city folk and house cat mothers, one kitten may be born slightly closer to one tree and the next may be born slightly closer to another. This is all the difference that is required. If you're even a molecule closer to one tree than another, that tree will become your home tree. There have never been any cases where a creature had more than one type of Charmwork, so even if you managed to be perfectly equidistant between two trees, one of them would end up as your home tree over the other. How that choice is made is not something anyone knows. Wild dwellers will often be even more intentional when they're having their kittens. Because they value Charmwork, nature, and family so deeply, the announcement that a Molly is pregnant is a cause for great celebration, and mothers tend to be deeply revered. Some families will try to have their kittens born by the same trees they were in order to carry on a family legacy, while others try to give each of their kittens a new tree in order to give them room for exploration into their own identities. When necessary, husbands and parents of the mother-to-be will even assist in carrying the mother to a tree before the birth of kittens, to give them the best chance of reaching the home tree they intended. Wild dwellers are sometimes thought of by city folk and house cats to be stuck up about their way of life, or too stuck in their own beliefs to notice how much easier their life would be in the cities. But this is not something wild dwellers give much consideration to. They are a prideful group, determined and dedicated to their ways and heritage. Living on their own, they are often skilled hunters, and can usually at least hold their own in a fight, especially with their above-average prowess in and access to Charmwork. They are caring and compassionate to the families they live with, though it is harder for them to collaborate with cats outside their family or system of beliefs. They are fiercely protective, but often open-hearted as well, understanding the necessity of collaboration to face dangers too large for one family to tackle. However, they are also quite stubborn, not just in their beliefs, but in their family groups, traditions, and territories as well. They don't strictly guard any of their borders, but they keep to strong routines for where they sleep, hunt, or trade, who they allow into their base and for how long, and what celebrations they have on different days. Anything that interferes with those routines will put them on edge and potentially on the defensive. The interactions wild dwellers have with other groups varies among different families, but many have a limited connection with city folk as part of their trade network. Very few wild dwellers ever meet or try to meet house cats. However, stationary wild dwellers do often meet nomadic individuals and groups who might want to stay briefly or trade resources or information. Speaking of, the fourth and final group, in the loosest sense of the word, is travelers. These cats can be city folk or wild dwellers in culture and background, but their defining trait is that they travel in and out of different regions and don't take roots in any one place. Most travelers are single cats, but some pairs or groups travel together as well. They can live just about anywhere and often change where they live based on the cultural climate, weather patterns, and resources available at a particular time. By traveling all around different cities, forests, mountains, lakes, and grasslands, they usually pick up holidays and traditions from all over. They don't always celebrate or believe in these as much as a stationary cat or group would, but they tend to honor all holidays and traditions equally, understanding the value of different traditions hailing from different places. They value freedom, exploration, knowledge, and wisdom picked up from other groups with different experiences, skills, needs, and otherwise, and don't mind bonding with cats they meet along the way. However, as they know they will have to leave any of these friends behind, they don't get all that attached to their relationships. Their lifestyles can make them good resources for city folk and wild dwellers who may want to learn from or trade with them. But as travelers themselves don't tend to care much about boundaries or routines of the places they pass through, they can also accidentally tread on some toes and insult or endanger the cats they stay with. I'll reiterate briefly that this is just the groups and cultures that cats have organized into. The squirrels, dogs, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, birds, rodents, rabbits, and deer that live in the area each follow their own customs that are mostly unknown to cats, and likely don't even share the same beliefs or traditions around Charmwork. With all of that said, I think it's high time I let you know what those cat-specific traditions actually are. Cats, at least in this region, have mingled with people enough to use the rough solar calendar. However, they consider April, with the birth of new life and the revival of the trees, to be the first month. Trees are only able to gift their charm force when they are tall, strong, and healthy, so young trees, shrubs, and any deciduous trees in the winter don't have enough charm force to pass it on to others. As a result, many of the cat-specific holidays and beliefs have formed around the seasons and the way they alter the nature around them. April 1st is New Year's Day. This and New Year's Eve are the most important and universally celebrated holidays to both wild dwellers and city folk. It is thought of as the first real day of spring, and is a day of joyous celebration. In many groups, a feast is planned, and the whole day is spent with family, or, in the city, allies, as you make goals to accomplish in the year ahead. The goals aren't generally treated seriously, but are meant as a symbol of the opportunities now available to everyone. The primary goal of the celebration is simply spending time with loved ones and celebrating the end of the long winter. After that point, the first full moon of the season is called First Light. It is often overshadowed by New Year's, being so close by, but it too is a time for celebration. More often, it's a time to actively appreciate all that the world is giving you, be that your charm work, your food, the colors and scents of spring, the flowing water or rich greenery, or the shade of the revived trees. It is tradition for flowers and plant sprigs to be woven together into wreaths or crowns to be worn on the head and neck during these celebrations. Feasts are much less common due to the proximity to New Year's, but are held in some communities. May's new moon, the weakest point in the strongest months, is known as Mending Night. It is a time to give back to the life around you and help it to flourish. Cats will often hunt less on these days, give respect to the other animals that take up their land, plant their own seeds or saplings, and halt the gathering of resources such as berries or bark for the day in order to let nature heal. June 20th is, roughly, the summer solstice. Both solstices are some of the most important days of the year, perhaps only eclipsed by New Year's. Grand celebrations are held on both of these days, and for the summer solstice, that celebration focuses on strength and competition. Summer is the strongest of the seasons, so this is a time to show off the power you have gained, be it physical or magical, through friendly competitions such as sparring, seeing how thick of a stick you can break, or holding your breath underwater for as long as you can. A feast is held around sunset, and whatever cat did the best in the competitions that day, or brought back the most prey, gets the first pick of the meal. July's full moon is called Enduring Light. It is when the sun beats down the strongest, and the light never ends. Many cats choose to sun themselves on rocks and/or go for swims all through the day and night to relish in the endless light this full day provides. More than at other times, cats are encouraged to reach out even to those not in their family or living group and interact with them, invite them over for activities, groom each other, and share a fun day in truce regardless of differences. For many city folk, it was Enduring Light that introduced them to these holidays in the first place. August's new moon, meanwhile, the hottest new moon in the year for this region, is called Resilient Night. It is traditional to celebrate with long naps and indulgences in what summer has to offer: heat, ample food, growth, and strong trees to provide ample charm work and sharpen your claws against. Resilient Night is treated less like a festival and more like a day to relax in the cooler night air and last phase of the summer before the cold begins to sweep in. Around September 22nd, we have the fall equinox. This day is marked as the turn towards cooler months, and the beginning of death to the plant life until the spring comes. It's a time to mourn what is being lost, and several cats celebrate by giving thanks to the trees, saplings, flowers, berries, wood, and otherwise that they made use of during the bountiful spring and summer months. Some will even use pine cones, leaves, petals, and such that have already fallen to construct simple pieces of art in order to honor the wild itself. It's a day to focus, not on yourself, but on nature. In the middle of autumn, usually around late October or early November, the nearest full moon is called Crisp Night. This moon brings with it a long night filled with chill air, whistling winds, long dark shadows, and dried, crisp plants. It is known as a haunting period. Young cats may try to scare each other with the existing spookiness of the world, giving each other dares to test their bravery, or even creating figures from the dried plants to cast denser shadows that appear as monsters under the moon's bright light. Older and more grounded cats will often instead use this time to brush up on moving in the dark and cooler environment, with less brush around to hide in. This way, they can prepare for even longer and cooler nights in the coming winter. After all, you can't be scared if you are the monster. The last full moon before winter, usually in late November or early December, is called Last Light. It is the last bright night before the winter chills arrive with the solstice, and as such, it's traditional to use this time for preparation, hunting what they can find, storing materials for the winter, and reinforcing structures for warmth. Cats will often get up especially early, before dawn, to catch an hour with the full moon's glow, thanking it for giving them this extra time to work before the hardest months come. Last Light is celebrated less bombastically than the holidays around it, and some families skip it entirely, while others view it as just another day of the work that they would be doing around this time regardless. On, roughly, December 21st, we have the winter solstice. As with the summer solstice, a grand celebration is held, and for the winter solstice, that celebration focuses on humility and giving. Cats stay up all night to keep the year alive and greet the dawn when it finally arrives. In the meantime, they give gifts or words of encouragement, groom each other, keep each other warm, and express their love in any way they can for their family, friends, and other community members. There usually isn't enough food to feast around this time, so instead the prey is shared, bite by bite, starting with the weakest members and leading up to the strongest. This is a time to appreciate every life around you, whatever your skills may be, and to take joy in being together as cats until the world is able to give you its gifts once again. Meanwhile, the first new moon after the solstice is called Darkest Night, and it fittingly brings cold, dark, and quiet. Darkest Night is traditionally a revered day of history, where the oldest cats will tell the young stories of cats past and tales almost forgotten to make sure that the memories of heroes and family members can survive, even when they cannot be seen. Cats currently mourning a loved one may choose to stay up the whole night, as they would on the solstice, so that they can keep the light alive for them until the dawn cracks through. In the middle of the winter, generally either late January or early February, the nearest full moon is called Winter's Light. The full moon at this time is a symbol of optimism. Many cats will sing or call to the sky, scratch up the surrounding bark, or make and leave trinkets around the forest. Anything to make themselves known, make a mark on the world, and liven up the day and, especially, night. This is a rather forcibly happy time, injecting the hard winter months with a dose of cat-created joy to help with morale. If there are kittens or young cats around, older cats will often create games for them to play to keep their blood pumping and voices wailing all through the night. When mid-March comes, around the 19th, we have the spring equinox. In this region, it isn't considered the real first day of spring, and as a result, isn't as widely celebrated, but it is still a special day to be born on or think about. It marks the first turn away from the bitter, cold eras of winter, and is a time to look forward to what is to come. In some families, it is tradition on this day to begin new projects, whether personal, interpersonal, skill, construction, travel, or otherwise, and to declare them to the whole family to mark the occasion and give you some incentive to follow through on your plans. And finally, we arrive back at New Year's Eve this time, on March 31st. While New Year's Day is a day of raucous celebration and time to share with your family, New Year's Eve is a day of reflection. Cats are expected to take stock of all they did in the past year, make amends for any wrongs, correct any gaps in their relationships, and celebrate any accomplishments as the year ticks down. Cats generally awaken around sundown on this day, so that they can stay up through the whole night until New Year's Day and its grand party arrives. You probably noticed that a lot of the holidays center around moon phases, and that is no accident. The amount of light cats have to guide their nightly duties and the amount of sun given to the plants, trees especially, radically impacts their schedules, opportunities, and moods. So wild dwellers built their yearly schedules around the two bodies in the sky that control not just them, but the world around them. Even outside of the full moons and new moons that mark specific holidays, all full moons mark good fortune, and some consider them days when the tree's spirits can most clearly see what you do. It is expected that you do your best for them on these days. New moons, meanwhile, are always nights of secrecy and insight. No spirit, and often no cats, can see you, so what you do on these nights is said to reveal who you really are. It is expected that you introspect on these days. Cats here don't really have a concept of an afterlife or individual spirits watching over them, but it is believed that, when you die, your energy is absorbed into the overall energy of the world, along with that of coyotes, squirrels, and plant life, to be given back to the trees and, through them, the rest of the world. Death is a loss for your family, but the world will benefit from the skills and wisdom you can add to its life force. Finally, we have to cover birthdays. Because wild dwellers most often live with their families or extended families, they all tend to know and often care about the specific dates of their birthdays. Some families place more or less weight onto the superstitions around which seasons, holidays, or moon phases their kittens are born on, but there aren't universal practices. City folk have come to sometimes celebrate their birthdays as well, but more often as a fun thing to think about than any sort of strict holiday. One of the most intense and festival-like birthday setups is done in the Woodland Guard, which I brought up in the last video. But as I'm keeping most of their information to myself for now, I'll instead tell you about how Elm's family celebrates. They were a fairly classical wild dweller family, with casual traditions, but great joy and care for them. Generally, on a cat's birthday, the other family members would give them the day off and catch an extra piece of prey for them, hopefully one of their favorites. At night, they would share their favorite memories of that cat, either over the past year or in general. They also tended to practice that particular tradition on the night of fallen family members' birthdays, though it was, of course, with a much more somber tone. Whew, that was a lot of information, but I do hope you found it interesting. The details of these groups and holidays are also things I will be explaining and exploring within Charmwork itself, but as there aren't too many spoilers attached to it, and since I've been referring to some of these groups and beliefs offhandedly in previous videos, I figured there was no harm in sharing it now. I've heard from some of you that you'd like to make your own OCs in the Charmwork world, either within this region or with other Charmwork types that come from other trees in your area, and I fully encourage that. Share them with me using my email or even by messaging me on Tumblr or Twitter when you're finished. I don't visit those sites anymore for fun, but I do get notified if I'm directly messaged, so I'll see if you share anything with me. Speaking of Charmwork OCs though, there is one more quick favor I have to ask. A few months back, I put out a series of community posts asking for potential details one could add to a Charmwork character, so that we could build an OC out of it. Using those ideas, and a few other aspects, I put together a Google form to help everyone vote on which aspects we will be using in this new character. When all the votes are counted, I will either be making a video or holding a live stream to design them together, depending on which I have time for. If you have any interest, keep a lookout on my channel for when I announce that. With all that said, however, thank you for your continued interest in this story. Writing Charmwork has been and continues to be extremely fulfilling for me, and I can't wait until I can share the full story with you. Also, as always, thank you for watching, and always remember that your world, or understanding of it, is not the only one that exists.